All right, we're back again. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Today's presentation is about sending your message across the board. As I stated a little earlier, that me, Ashraful Haque, as the project mentor chair, is going to sit with the top 12 teams that are going to participate in the final round for this project. So I decided that why should the top 12 team have all the fun? Let's share this thing with all the team members so that they can use this in their future projects and competitions, and also maybe wherever they're presenting. So the first question is that why do you need to send your message across the board? I think it's pretty self-explanatory that your presentation means that you're trying to say something to your audience, right? However, as engineers, we sometimes forget our audiences. So in your audience, there might be someone who is not subject expert in your domain, or maybe someone just totally out of, engineering section, someone who's eager to learn what you're doing and everything. So when we are presenting, sometimes unconsciously it so happens that we get too much into technical details rather than focusing on what's the message actually is. So I have put two sort of quotations here just to emphasize on the importance of your presentation skill and sort of narrating your ideas consciously to a certain audience. So I attended a smart grid age analytics workshop organized by Georgia Tech in Atlanta 2019. So there were like 10 different universities there, top 10 companies such as Facebook, Google, Amazon, uh, some consulting firms were there as well. Now there was a panel session, and one question was asked to them by the audiences, that what do you look for in an engineer right now? You especially focus on data analytics. However, almost all of them agreed is that they're looking for soft skills nowadays in the upcoming engineers. That means they're trying to find someone who can easily interpret the ideas that are going in the backend in different complex applications and can easily sort of explain them to people across different domains. So what they were trying to touch there is that your soft skills, meaning your presentation, how you interact with people, are pseudo extracurricular activity right now. Meaning you won't be able to put that in your CV. However, when they are talking with you, when you are presenting something to them, be it for your interview or something, they understand whether you are able to communicate that or not. So that's important. You need to practice on your presentation skill and how you sort of send your message and ideas across the board. Another interesting thing that I came across round about the same time, there was an interview done by a TV, I think one of the TV channels. I was watching it in YouTube, and Indra Nooyi was the CEO of PepsiCo, and she was asked a very simple question: why do you think why do you think you became a CEO? What's your greatest strength? And she answered in a simple way. She said that I think I can break down very complex things in a simple manner. So if you can break down complex ideas into small understandable components, people will appreciate you. They will listen to you. So coming from academic point of view, then to the top of corporate point of view, both side, it's very important that you are able to send your message very clearly and very intelligently and in a wholesome way as well. Now the agenda of today's presentation will be as follows. I'll start off with what I like to call a rule of 3S. You won't find it in any textbook or something. It's something that from my experience, I've came to implement in all of my presentations, and also I've seen group presenters sort of formulate their presentation based on this rule of 3S. Second, I'll touch a little upon the business model preparation. Now, Dr. Fatta, in his third training module, has given an excellent explanation how to build a business model. So I'll refer back to that slides, or rather that training module, for you to go through. It's explained in a very detailed way and very nicely. I'll just touch upon a little small thing, a little high level, but I think that will help you to make your business model later down the line. Third, how you can design your presentation and the do's and don'ts. And we'll finish off with a Q&A. Now, what is a rule of 3S? You can actually sort of implement this rule whenever you are presenting, be it your university project competition, or even if you are presenting your final thesis. So whenever you're presenting something, make sure these three functionalities are there, or rather these three characteristics are there: simplicity, sustainability, and scalability. Now, what are these three things? I guess most of you have heard this kind of wordings in many tutorials or many other webinars where they're trying to uh, you know train how to do presentations and idea competitions. So let's do a little bit deep dive onto it. Now, what is simplicity? Simplicity, it means that your idea or your project or your presentation, it's very simple to understand. That's what the definition of simplicity is. Now, what does that mean? That means you are not going to get too much technical in your presentation. Always leave that part for Q&A, or maybe in a one-to-one discussion with a subject expert. Make your initial presentation really simple so that people across the board can understand. That goes the human part of it, interaction part of it. Now comes the actual idea or the project that you're trying to do. Ideally, your project and idea should not have too many moving parts. That means you should not want to do too many things within the same project. That sort of, overwhelms the judges and also the audience that you are trying to say to. It should be very specific what you're trying to achieve with as minimum moving part as possible. And third one, it should be applicable across demography, regardless of whether you are in a developed country or in an underdeveloped country, or maybe you are a male or a female, or wherever you are living across the world. Ideally, your ideas should be applicable across demography, because then they will be able to better relate to what you're trying to say. Now, for the international competitions, those words are true. However, if you are participating in a local competition, then you can definitely narrow down your scope of work within that country or within that particular group. So there goes your simplicity part. It's very simple to understand, not too many moving parts, and also everyone can relate to your idea. So it's very simple for them to understand. I call it 2 plus 2 equals to 4. However, it's um, falls under the 3S features. So that's the first part, simplicity. The next one is pretty interesting, sustainability. Now, most of the time, whenever we hear the word sustainable, a green plant, a picture of a green plant pops up into the mind, as if it's something totally related to environment, clean energy, or something like that. That's actually not entirely true. Although majority of the time, because of the focus on the environmental effect and everything, sustainable projects means something which is good for the environment. However, in an idea or project competition, sustainability means, from the business point of view, that your idea will hold its value over a long period of time. That means it's not an idea for right now. That idea will be applicable over a long period of time. So that's sustainability. It will sustain. Number two, your idea has to be low maintenance and high return. That means if you can show that with the minimum effort, you can get a good amount of return. Sometimes, not all the time, sometimes it's defined as your ROI, rate of return of investment. But ROI is not the whole picture. There is no thumb rule about what should be the value of a project to make it a good project. Does the ROI have to be 5 and above? Is 1 too low? Doesn't matter. My understanding or from my experience, I have seen, as long as someone's not losing money, that means your ROI is more than one. That's good enough. Everything else you can put into that ROI as you're presenting your project. For example, you have two projects. For example, one project's ROI is 1.5, another one is 5, right? Obviously, from just the naked eye, you'll think that everyone will go for the 5. However, that 1.5 ROI might reach many people, which the companies want to. So, a very simple rule, don't think too much about the return in terms of ROI. Think how much value it is adding to that particular scenario. And if you can get that message across the judge, or maybe in some cases to prospective uh, investors or donors, that's very important. Business people, they have gone through a lot of phases and stuffs. They don't just look at it ROI, they look at a lot of different things. It's the value that they most look at. And number three, definitely it comes from the ROI. It's like you need to have a viable financial model. Your project cannot always run on donations and stuffs, that will not sustain. You need to find a way to make your model financially viable. Now there is a very important concept here that I'd like to emphasize on. If your project is focused on activities like this competition, like humanitarian activities, that means as long as you can prove that you don't need donations, however, your project can sort of sustain on its own funding, or sort of sources of income. That's good enough, because nobody needs to pay it. You're getting some humanitarian activities done, which is appreciable. However, for other business competitions, you might need to focus on your profit part a little bit more. So your viable financial model depends on which type of projects you're proposing and what's the scenarios are. So there goes your two things, your simplicity and your sustainability. So those two will get you through the door in any project competition. You will pass the first phase without any doubt if you have a simple project which is sustainable. Now comes the top 12, so to say, or the final winner, is the scalability part of it. Is your product or the project or the idea can be built as like a platform or kind of a thing, so that other products can be built on top of that? That's number one, scalability. Number two, can that idea be integrable to other services? Meaning, if the company, or just let's say for example IEEE PES is running some other activities which your project can be plugged into, that's scalability in terms of your idea, because you can quickly get integrated into those line of stream, and vice versa if something can come into your project as well. And finally, in terms of scalability, preferably your project or idea should be technology agnostic. As you know, technology changes very rapidly nowadays. Whatever standard here won't be standard 6 months down the line. So try not to be too much specific to a single technology. Try to make it as much as general as possible. What I'm trying to say here is that, for example, cloud technology is very standard right now, right? However, we can use different kind of cloud technologies. Can be stored in edge cloud computing. It can be stored directly into cloud, or even you can store it virtually into a local network. I'm just giving a very specific example, but the point here is that try to cover as much as technological, you know agnosticness as possible, so that it can sustain over a longer period of time. So these are the three rules that, from my experience in participating in different idea competitions, judging them, and being into a lot of mm, both corporate and academic meetings, I've seen these are the three things that every judge, every competition looks for. If you have that, you're good. You just need to present it in a nice way. So coming from there, now how do I prepare my business model so that it's financially viable, it's simple, it's sustainable, and it's scalable, right? As I said at the beginning, uh, Dr. Fatah has given a very detailed explanation on how to make the business models. I saw it and I think it's very detailed explanation that Dr. Fatah has given there is the third training module. So I refer back to that module to for you to look at, to how to make the business models, how to do those calculations and everything. What I'm trying to say here is something that's coming from my experience. So I've worked in a multinational company for 4.5 years almost, and I was a management trainee there. So I've seen how the top management thinks. Now there are two parts of an idea. One is the planning. That's what you are doing. You are presenting an idea. You are planning an idea for them to execute. However, they, from a company point of view or from a business point of view, instantaneously and very unconsciously, they're thinking about how to implement that into their operation. That goes into the back of their mind. So the point here is that regardless of the situation, any corporation, any company, or even any maybe you know NGOs or any voluntary organizations, they will always focus on one thing. The people in decision making charts, in charge of decision making, they'll focus on one thing: bottom line. What's bottom line? It's basically your profit. What's end of the receipt? So if you can make it green somehow, that means after implementing your project, they don't have to introduce too much operation or too much logistics, or don't need to make too many changes in the regular operation, and you're bringing in some values. That bottom line is green. So then they're much more interested in your idea. However, if your idea requires a huge change in their setup, a lot of new manpower, a lot of new logistics, they will lose interest regardless of how interesting your idea is. That's the in the majority of the time, but maybe there are some one or two exceptional business cases where this doesn't apply. Now there are two ways to make bottom line green. Number one, show how your idea can be profitable for their businesses. Two type of consideration are here. Either you can show financial, that it's financially very benefit and it will only increase over the time, or most of the companies, especially the organizations, they have CSR activities. That means corporate social responsibilities. Humanitarian project competitions are actually pretty much aligned with that. So your idea is for a well kind of human being, or serves a noble purpose, or sort of serves the humankind or something like that. That's CSR. Whenever you're thinking about CSR, organization don't look for that much of a benefit. I'm repeating myself again. If you can just prove it can sustain by its own, they will go for it, because they have a good marketing just by sponsoring or sort of promoting your product. Number two, can your idea be reused into some of their own products, or your some of their own projects that are already ongoing? Is the same thing. That means you will be adding value to one of their existing ongoing projects that they have already invested in. So that's that. These are two ways that you can make your business model interesting to people presenting people you're presenting to. And for other considerations, like what are the things, for example, value, mission statement, impact, all of these things, I again refer back to the third training module. It's explained in very details there. Now, you know what to do. 3S, you know how to make the business model. Now you need to present it. Very important. So I've tried to note down a couple of things here. Uh, I'm recording this meeting here because I'll send it to the top 12 teams. and they will have to see the presentation and sort of design their presentations accordingly, and then I'll sit with them individually. But right now, let's go through for all the participants here. So first of all, you should have an impactful title. It shouldn't be too long, too lengthy, something that people will remember out of a bunch of ideas or projects. It can be an abbreviated version. For example, you can shorten your title. If it is like, you can make it like today's presentation, I said sending your message across the board. That's a theme based title. I couldn't narrow it down. I always prefer an abbreviated version of your idea. If you can make it, name the whole thing, then use the abbreviate in your presentation, and in the ongoing or subsequent presentations, use the abbreviate version. Very important, I mean, very impactful. People remember the short version very nicely, and they will come up like, oh, that project, something like that. So have an impactful title, gets the attention of the audiences. Number two, use visual aid as much as possible. Again, some of you may know all of these things. However, I would like to present this to the whole audience, just in case someone might get benefit from here. So use visual aid as much as possible. Use images, graphs, and flowcharts. I'll give an example at the end of my slide how you can totally change your presentation quality just by following these things. Number three, your slides needs to be easygoing. I don't know if you have noticed or not, I'm just using a white background and a PS logo, nothing else. That's it. You don't need to be too flashy. Just make sure your slides are easy going. It's not too busy. And number four, carry your theme across the presentation. Don't hobble around. You have a pointed theme in your project, carry it through. For example, I'm always going back to project, presentation, everything in a very subtle way, trying to go back rather to carry the theme of what I'm trying to do here. Now, moving on, what should be your do's to make that presentation, interesting to the audience? Number one, we know all of these things, but sometimes, we miss a couple of things, so the other people get an A. So I'm trying to summarize everything all together. Very important. Start and finish strong. Everyone starts with like, hey, my name is Ashraful Haque, I'm going to present this thing, we're from something like that. Whenever you start that, everyone sort of loses a little bit of their interest. So fine, try to start off with a story. That's the best thing. How do you read a storybook? How do you start a book that you enjoy reading? It's a story. I don't think many of us like to read our academic books, but that's a different story. Try to start off with a story that connects to your project. Or you can start off with a very astonishing number or statistics that is applicable to your project. For example, someone is, making a project that sort of a project is proposing a device that beeps up whenever a child is close to some water source, for example, maybe river or some pond or something like that. So one quick statistics can be like thousands, like maybe I'm just making up a number, I'm just giving an example, 3,000 people die every minute, or every 3,000 child die across the world every second, just because they were not looked after properly or because of accidents, all of those things. So either give a story which can be fictional, which can be practical, and which can be from a real life incident, or give a good statistics that sort of establishes the authority of your project, that okay, this is interesting, we need this project. Number two, use as less description as possible. That reduces distraction. Don't go into too many details into your slide, because people get confused whether they listen to you or they read the text in the title. Oh, sorry, in the slides. So don't use too much description. Number three, research. What were the past projects of this competition? What are the mission and value statements of the projects, or the company or the organization that you are presenting to? Number four, don't go for more than one message per slide. Number of slide doesn't matter. Number of message in slide matters. So keep single message within per slide. Prepare for Q&A. Read a lot of things. Maybe do your background research and prepare well for your Q&A. Very important. Sometimes the judges push your buttons. However, if you don't know something, they try to see how much you can be stretched. Just be polite and humble and answer to your best of your abilities. That's it. Don't panic too much. Sometimes they stretch you to see how much you can be stretched for their judgment. Number 6 and 7, perhaps the most important two things. Listen to your own presentation. If it doesn't make sense to you, it won't make sense to the audience. Reorganize. Number 7, practice, practice, and practice. Sometimes when you listen to presentations, people like Steve Jobs or maybe Jeff Bezos or top presenters of the world, you think that they are natural. No, they prepare themselves for days for that 30 minutes of presentation. For days, they have said for themselves in different interviews and everything. So anyone who looks like giving a natural presentation, he has prepared for days, trust me. So if you practice, you can do it for yourself as well. So these are the do's. Start and finish strong. Don't give too much description. Do your research, single message, listen to your own presentation and practice. Now, what are the don'ts? Perhaps this is more important than your do's, because this sort of irritates the judges or the people listening to and sort of gives you negative marks. So first, don't use excess bold and italic fonts, distracts people. Just use where it needs to be used or necessary. You want to pull the attention of the audience, you use your bold and italic in that place only. I don't think I have used bold and italic anywhere in this whole presentation. Number 2, poorly organized slides. So what are the poorly characteristics of a poorly organized slide? Uneven font. Sometimes you're using 12, sometimes 14. That distracts people. Too flashy, too much color there, too much background noise, too much background color. Number 3, your story goes back and forth. There is no coherency there. Sometimes you're talking about maybe implementation, and then you are coming back to how your motivation or why you did that. Just make sure that you have a story that follows one after the another. Number 3, too much word. Again, don't put too much word inside the slide, inside your slides. Number 3, don't go inward. Instead, try to go outward. That means in your project, that's fine. You will have to go into your technical details and everything. However, try to make it more general by going outward, by projecting your impact into the world. Yes, you will definitely try to show your technical expertise, but don't get too much focus on those things in a project competition. Try to project your impact outward. Misspelling, don't misspell it. It sort of irritates the judges as well, makes you look you know not serious about the competition. Never cross the next one, never cross the time limit or miss any requirements. Judges are there to filter you out. I mean, they have to take the tough decisions. One of the criteria, they don't specifically say that, but they always look, are you missing the time limit or not, or are you missing any requirements? Then it's easy for them to get it from consideration. Number 6, no slide number. It's a very common mistake we sometimes overlook. In the presentation, you don't use slide number, but think about it. If someone wants to ask you about something, how can he refer to which slide he is talking to if you don't have a slide number? So always have the slide numbers whenever you're presenting to any idea competition or maybe in your university or whatever. So what did we try to present here today? Number 1, how do you formulate an idea? 3S. How do we present a business model? Think about the bottom line. How do we make the presentation so that that idea gets through the competition, and the do's and don'ts? Now let's take an example of it. How can we implement those sort of tips and tricks of presentation. Now, maybe you are asking me, all right, we listen to your presentation. Now tell us, why should we listen to you, Mr. Haque? Right? It's a valid question. So let's take it as an example that I'm giving you a presentation to explain why you should listen to me. Okay, so this is my qualification. One way to do is, this is like, you know, example one, like I'm trying to explain why should you listen to me. So yes, I'm doing PhD and I've already done my master's. My supervisor was Dr. Saifur Rahman. He was the past president of IEEE PES. I have multiple work experience and I have multiple affiliations as well. What is wrong with that slide? Everything, almost everything. However, in the majority of presentations, you'll see slide like this. So let's go through what's wrong with these slides. Number one, as I said, too many words. Either I have to read it or you have to go through it one by one. But what is the objective of this slide? Me trying to express why I'm suitable to give you today's presentation, right? Where is the message there? It's almost vanished. You cannot see it, right? Too many words there. So now let's go to exhibit 2. I can convey all of this message in a much more organized way through this. So I can just have this slide put on the board like right now. I can say this is Ashraful Haque. You can see a handsome picture of mine. I've been involved across multiple domains. Currently, I'm doing PhD at Virginia Tech, and I've worked in corporations such as Telenor, Samsung. I've worked in startups, and I'm involved with a lot of organizations. So I've been on both sides of the aisle. I've been in voluntary organizations, in corporate organizations, presenting my ideas and judging a lot of different idea competitions as well. So that's why you should listen to my presentation webinar, or how to, you know, what suggestions I'm telling to say. So this is just an example. Just look at the stark difference. This is probably you have already forgotten what was there. However, this is easy for your eye and sort of gives you much more information than the previous slides. So that's how you sort of use visual aids, simplicity, and all of these things in your presentation as you sort of go along. Thank you. Floor is open for Q&A now. I don't think we have too many participants, so maybe one or two groups. You can put your questions in the chat window and I'll answer them one by one.
Hello.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Okay. So we have two questions right now. So I will read it one by one. First question is, how will questions about videos recording quality be evaluated?
All right. So is it like, I mean, what I'm trying to guess here is that video quality, meaning like the content of the video quality, or how was it, you know, recorded or something like that? Can we get a little bit of more clarification? I think Matthews asked that question, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so maybe he can, you know, explain a little bit more. Matthews, you can unmute yourself. That's fine. We don't have too many participants, so we can. Matthews, are you here? Can you hear me? You can unmute, and I mean, I need a little bit of clarification when you're talking about video quality.